with that awareness. Once you can program the machine with your awareness to have detailed thought and ideas, to do deep work where you're taking blocks of time and you're only concentrating on one thing without disruption or distraction, and you can think through an idea with immense detail. I was sitting last night and I was programming applications, vibe coding they call it, because I'm using my words, not program language. So immediately I'm no expert at it. But I'm sitting there and I've created multiple apps. One that gave me an aggressive dossier about myself to where I'm going back and forth with it. And it helps me see my blind spots psychologically, spiritually, in business. Right? And then I'm sitting going back and forth and I'm tweaking that. And you realize that when you describe an idea, the level of detail in which you describe ideas is more important than the idea itself. Because I might describe an app, but then I realize I didn't put a button on there that allows the app to go back to the home page. Or I didn't put a button on there in specificity that allows me to refresh something, right? That when you're designing a world or you're designing an idea, you have to think about all the different layers and levels that goes into the input in the user interface. Then you have to look at the user design. So if I'm able to sit down and I'm able to get into deep focus, and this is something that I believe that everybody should be doing, I want you to think without borders, think without limits. I want you to do blue sky thinking, because in Zion, that's all we're going to be doing. In the high level nation, that's all we're doing. Blue sky thinking. I want you to sit back and I want you to think of your ideas in detail. It should come to the point where you can write a book on it. You should write a thesis on it. And I mean, it can be as wild and vast and imaginative and creative as possible. And don't think about budget. Don't think about how you're going to make it. None of that. Just create. Just ideate. And I mean, get into the details. Become a kid with it. Because that's what it's going to require in this time, day, and age. And guess what? Even if the technology is not there yet to make what you want, they're building the technology to make what you want. So if I'm in there right now and I'm like, this is not as easy to make yet, I still would have to hire somebody to execute this. What happens is wait a couple of months, then they built the tool out to make it easier. You can create 3D worlds. You can chain link all of these apps together. Every single day is becoming easier and easier and easier and easier and easier and easier and easier. So you get to make your idea bigger and bigger and bigger versus limiting your idea to the constraints of your resources. Because you're like, well, I don't know how to do this, or this gonna cost too much, or this gonna take too much time. Jack Dorsey had just gave a breakdown. And Jack Dorsey gave a breakdown on how he was the founder of Twitter. He said, I made an app in a week that would have took me 2 years. Now, he has, of course, programming experience. But it's getting to that point where you can use something like Lovable.com. Right? You can use Vibe Code app. Right? And you can just type in what you wanted to create. But again, it's not just the idea itself. It's the small nuance. It's thinking about how the human being can use it. It's thinking about the usefulness and how it fits into the world. And you don't want to just create a bit of a startup that can be erased by a new idea that OpenAI comes out with. This is why I don't just teach learning tools. I teach how to have an overmind of AI. An overmind is thinking about the philosophy, the higher points of it, not just being in the weeds of it. But if I'm creating something because I also have the distribution channel for it. So when it comes to, a lot of you all may say, well, you don't have the following, you don't need the following, because they actually need you to create something and then they will distribute it on their platforms the same way I will for people that's in Zion that build ideas that I believe in. So now if you want to reach hundreds of thousands of people and you build something, that I could partner with, you have distribution. So now you ain't got to worry about that part. Now, guess what? We got a brother on the team that is a co-owner of a bank. He can help get you loans. You understand me? For your business and get you capital and credit for your business. So now you ain't got to worry about the capital problem. I just don't want you all to think in problems at all. And I know it's going to be hard because we're so used to doing it. We're so used to thinking about what we don't have. I need you to practice thinking without limitations. That's the only people I can be around. I can't be around no people. I can't be around people that make excuses. I can't be around people who don't know how to think on a higher level. And for those that's been asking for mentorship and things of that nature, it will be available in the Zion. I won't be doing it outside of the Zion. The only other place to where people will be able to onboard Zion is in our Patreon. Our Patreon members will be, will have the opportunity to enter into Zion, to where you will be a part of our community. We're building out our voice, I really call it the bonfire, right? Where you actually come around and have this bonfire moment to where y'all able to build. You know what I mean? And so that will be available soon. And then right now we're building out our passports. So we're testing to make sure that you are highly aligned. If you're not aligned with our ideas and our goals and our visions to build, which one of those things is going to be able to build alternative cities and communities together, buying land, building on top of that land, or finding members in Zion that have land, resources, etc. But right now, my goal is to really get capital for everything that I'm doing so that I can execute at a high level. But I know that the capital exists inside the community. Let me give you a breakdown. And then I'm about to go work out. So, let's say it like this. A small town can be anywhere between 1,000 to 20,000 people. Influencers are economies, but they didn't teach you this because they didn't want you to organize on the back end. Instead of social media, the goal is to create social infrastructure. You understand me? To where we can enlist for the assets, right, within a nation, right, and what everybody has within that nation. So if we got 1,000, if you got 1,000 people that follow you to 20,000 people that follow you, right? And you think about it from a GDP standpoint, that can be anywhere up to $40 million in GDP, depending on, you understand me, the average income of those people, right? So if you got an older group of people that's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, right, then, of course, the boomer generation got a lot of money. So if we're looking at a small town can have between 1,000 and 20,000 people, and that can represent at a minimum level $40 million. Now, if we're looking at, let's say, a city, right, to where it got like 100,000 to 500,000 people, right, and then of course that can go even higher, but we're talking about at minimum level, right? Now we're looking at to where you're talking about in the billions of dollars. Then we go into, let's say, 1 million to 1.5 million, right? We're going into tens of billions of dollars. We're just talking about the assets, the income, right? The buying power and the GDP just within that community. So what happens on social media, the reason why they had to make this thing so disconnected from having any infrastructure is because influence is too powerful. When you can get 100 million people that follow one person, right? That is a small country. That country then worth $1 trillion. So that means that you have the ability to influence possibly trillions if you could organize infrastructure behind that influence. So typically you'll see somebody, let's say like a Kim Kardashian, right? The reason they're going to pay her $1 million per post, a reason they're going to give her deals that's worth billions of dollars is because she has the ability to possibly influence trillions of dollars and over time. Right? And so influence is actually economic, because when you are somebody, let's say like a Yaqui, and he's teaching millions of people and he's telling them what not to eat and what to eat, You just influenced their habits for the next 10, 20 years. So now you shifted their habits, right, away from Kellogg products. You shifted their habits away from Coca-Cola products, right? So you took money out their pockets and then you shifted it over to another industry. You might not realize that if you are a person that has a vegan business or wellness company, you have been indirectly impacted from the influence without realizing it, just because somebody is educating a community and influencing them to different habits. So now when you creating your brand, you might not realize that you can thank this vegan influencer. But that's the way influence works. It is a web that is connected to the decisions that the consumer chooses. So when you raise somebody's consciousness, right, you're changing the GDP of that country. And so you think about that on a organizing level, that if you have influence over a people and they allow you to have that influence over the people, and more than that, they're giving you their data. All right, now here's the important part with all of this. The reason that it's hard to do things, because typically we don't have the data inside black and brown communities. GDP is gross domestic product. So look that up. Typically, if you don't have the data, then you can't determine what people really need and what they really want. You can't understand their habits. So these companies, like let's say OpenAI, people are talking to them personally. And as they're talking to OpenAI, they're treating it like it's their therapist. So they're telling it what they need and what they don't need. OpenAI is able to clock your schedules of use, is able to clock your emotions, and then they're able to take that data, right, which is very valuable data, and then they're going to be able to turn that into insights. Those insights allow them to then turn those into products to show you what commercials to make. But remember, they have AI, so they can create AI commercials that is customized directly towards you. All right. So therefore, when they're getting you to buy things inside of ChatGPT, right, it's because they have a rich amount of data on you, right? And those insights allow them to transform that into a product. So now they're influencing your habits because you're using their product, and their goal is to keep you inside their world. So you're going to use the ChatGPT, then you're going to use the Sora, right? And then they have like Pulse, which gives you updates on a day-to-day. So all of this keeps you in this economic cycle. But the problem is that we never typically give those type of insights and data to somebody that looks like us. So when you want somebody in the modern day and age to nation build, to lead, you would actually have to give them enough data to where they can start building out the products, the community, and the resources. Because it's like anytime I go travel somewhere, I have to learn the people, right? You have to hit the streets. You have to know what people need in order to fulfill the needs. So yes, they got the Oura rings, they got the watch, they got the Apple Watches, they have your health data, they're tracking your steps, they're tracking your brain waves. So they know how you're feeling, they're tracking your thinking. And then they're creating and taking that data from the brain waves, right? That's why sometimes it might not be one app that's tracking you and then something pops up from the app. But what it is each app is selling data to the next app. So everything that you use is an insight to a habit, right? And so you might be talking to the microphone, and maybe it's not Apple directly sending that, but Apple may be giving data to another company that then, is tracking you and then is showing you an app. But you don't realize what patterns and habits are underlying that is information to them that is valuable, because the AI is able to take that data and understand patterns in it, things that human beings can't even recognize. And especially as they plugging it up to super AGI and to these super quantum computers. So this is why, as we're building, you have to get the data of the people, right? When Trump comes out and he says he has the data on the new jobs being created, imagine you're able to do that in your community, to where you can be like, yo, here are the jobs that we created inside our community, but you created impact, but you can't track the impact because nobody giving you the research, the data, and the numbers. So I've changed and made people a lot of money but I can't track it. So I can't say, yo, okay, over the course of 10 years, right, I've influenced, $10 billion. I can show you how many people watched. I can show you the impressions. I can say that, we had just on High Level Conversation 100 million views, and then we had billions of impressions. But what does that data actually mean to me? Right? It gives me an idea, but it doesn't give me the details. I don't know. So now you got to get a breakdown of what is the average income that somebody who follows you make, what are all of the sites that they watch, what are the competing ones, right? What impact have you made in people's lives? And that to me is a different metric that we want to track, is impact. But they don't give you impact metrics. They only give you the metrics to keep getting more and more attention, more and more and more attention, and then you have to build systems outside of that attention to capture that funnel.